Hello once again everybody, this is uxwbill here, and I wasn't going to make this video in a particularly large hurry, but then I was watching the Weasel Show tonight and some people asked about it. Some people knew that I'd gotten this power supply because of my other communications with them on YouTube and in other places, and I said jokingly film at 11. Well, it's about 10 o'clock right now, so I guess I better get to this if I'm going to. This is the replacement power supply for the Dell Dimension 2300 computer system that came out of the trash. This is another high-pro power supply. This is pretty much the cheapest decent option I found on eBay. This is an HP-P3087F3, and I don't know what originally it might have been shipped in. It's used, but the seller said it was good, and even wrote something to that effect on it. It claims a maximum continuous output power, of 305 watts. It's got a lot of decent connectors on it, you know, the typical 4-pin Molexes. There's only one floppy connector, 24-pin connection going to the motherboard. This, I think, is for use with a server board. I want to say this, they call this like EPS 12V or something. I'm not sure about that, though. It has a couple of serial ATA connections, which I won't need. And then, of course, off in the distance there is the 12-volt connection for the processor core. Now let's go ahead and have a look inside this thing, just because I want to show you what it looks like. And I can't resist any opportunity to take my golden screwdriver to something. Check that out, folks. Now if that isn't a beefy looking power supply, I really don't know what is. In fact, I was very shocked when I looked inside this thing to see just how much meat and heat sinking there was inside here. The two filter capacitors are over here, and people have said, you know, some of the people who say, you know, I don't have the expertise that you do, and I would use that very loosely here because I'm far from an expert on switch mode power supplies. So if you hear anything blatantly wrong here, don't laugh too hard. But we have the two filter capacitors right here. Both of these are Panasonic caps, rated for 105 degrees Celsius. An interesting departure from the TPO ones in the original. Down here, we have the rectifier bridge, which is this thing right here with the heatsink on it. And it's rare to see one of those bearing a heatsink. At least I haven't seen it very often. A couple of choke coils, possibly an MOV right there. And the fuse. Let's see what else we've got. A couple of capacitors across the power input. Those are those blue orbs right there. And then you have a very, very beefy looking heatsink on the chopper transistors. And then over here, for the other transistors, they also have a pretty beefy heatsink as well. The thing almost looks like a Christmas tree in there. It's way more than this thing would ever need. But I'm here to tell you that this thing would probably run 350 watts comfortably, and that you might even be able to stretch 400 out of it if you really wanted to press your luck. Over here is the little board with the controller on it and some adjustments that have been glued in place, and we don't mess with those. Now this thing does have a thermally controlled fan. You can see the thermal sensor is right there, and depending on how hot that gets, it'll tell the fan to speed up if that's what it's called for. So all in all, although this is not one of the big name brand supplies, this is a very good power supply, and it's been tested, and it does indeed work perfectly. But there's a catch. I didn't show you the CPU power connector earlier. Look at this. That doesn't look very appealing, does it? Yum yum. I love burned parts. This does suggest that the power supply was healthy enough to meet whatever power demands were being made of it, but that there was a marginal connection or there was something wrong with the motherboard that was hooked up to this. Now, I gave about $20 plus, well, no, shipping was included with this power supply, and I contacted the seller immediately about this, and she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll give you half your money back." As it turned out, when I mentioned that the item was damaged in the pictures, which I really wasn't sure was a smart thing to do, she gave me all of my money back without complaint, comment, or fuss. So sometimes there are eBay sellers out there that do the right thing. And this little mess can definitely be cleaned up. Just clip this lead off, replace it with a nice new one, and go again. We'll cover the electrolytic capacitors in here a little bit more. The two filters are Panasonics. Most all of the other big caps in here are Panasonics, but there are a couple of small TPO capacitors in here, although I don't think they're going to be a problem. So let's go ahead and do some modifications here and get this thing cooking. Oh yeah, there are the heat sinks out of the old power supply, the one that died. I've gone ahead and gutted it for parts and anything else that seemed interesting. Compare that to the one that's in here for the chopper transistors. In case you forgot what it looked like, it's the one that's sitting right in there. So give that a comparison as far as the thickness goes. And then here's the one for the rest of the power transistors in the unit. And again, if you put that in place, you can see that it is kind of dwarfed by the thickness of the one that is in this supply. So this thing is definitely much more of a beast, and certainly something of a sleeper once you've looked at the internals. And now for the repair. There's not much to this. I've already gone ahead and taken the side cutters and cut this old damaged connector off. Junk. Don't need that anymore. And I saved this from the old power supply along with most of the rest of the wiring for whatever nefarious purposes I might have in the future. The old power supply is certainly not going to miss it. And now all I have to do is being careful to match the colors, otherwise you'll get to find out about computing's version of the Big Bang Theory, is connect these wires together, reroute everything, plug the connector in down there to that 4-way plug, and if I'm feeling real fancy, I might even put it back in the cable guide down there, which I'll probably do because for some unknown reason I did it the first time. Okay, here's the completed repair. All the wires are joined to matching colors, which again is a very, very good thing to have. If you were to do this on your own and you found that the colors did not match, you'd need to stop and fix that because, like I said earlier, you will probably blow components clean off the motherboard. Now these are just simple plastic butt splices available at any hardware or electrical supply store. And I could have gotten a lot fancier with this. I could have actually soldered these together or heat shrunk them or something fancy like that. And I'm sure that some complete plonker who has no concept of a life and no videos on their channel of them doing better will be along soon enough, as with some of my other electronic repair videos, to tell me just how wrong I did it and how I'm a horrible person. Oh well, they need to get a life. This is a trash-picked computer, and I'm not putting any more money into it than I have to until I think I've gotten my money's worth out of it. Whew, excuse me. But I'll go ahead and bundle these up, and it'll be time for a smoke test. Everything's wired up and ready to go. It's time for a smoke test. Now, I have always been a big proponent of clearly announcing to your friends, family, and significant others just what it is you're about to do. So, here we go. Smoke test! Got power lights. And we've got a power on self-test. Yep, there it is, booting into Windows. The trash-picked beast lives again. Power supply sounds good, fans running well. And this power supply has something that is kind of hard to find with power supplies that have even a modicum of quality to them. And that is no power switch. Now, in this particular Dell case, that wouldn't be a problem because there's plenty of room here for the power switch. But many of the later Dell towers, including, I think, the Dimension 2400, the 4600, the 4700, and all the plastic clamshell machines from the 8200 to the 8400, have a metal tongue here that you would either have to nibble out of place to remove, or you'd have to get a power supply that doesn't have a power switch, and this one would be perfect for that application. So thank you all for watching, and feel free to leave a comment if you have one.